which is similar to what's going on in Prince George's County. Market incentives, same thing if they're working at a hard-to-staff school or if they're in a hard-to-staff position. And then they have several ways in which they can get compensated for student growth. There are two elements of the student growth which are interesting. One is the more traditional one that I talked about that looks at value-added growth based on the state standardized test scores. The second one is a process by which a teacher sits down with his or her principal and develops student growth learning objectives for the year and says, I think my students have issues around literacy. It's very classroom and context specific. It says, what do my kids in this classroom need, and how am I going to assess whether or not they've gained it? They implement that plan in the beginning of the year. It's evaluated and assessed using real, authentic student data throughout the year. And if a teacher meets that objective, then they get compensated. A couple of really interesting parts about the Denver plan. It is across the board throughout the district. It was voluntary for all current teachers in the district, could either opt in or opt out. They had a 3-year window in which they can evaluate and assess what the system looked like, and they had to opt in or opt out. It was mandatory for all new teachers who entered into the system. They did a couple of things that were critically important that we believe are fundamental. One is around funding. One of the things that happened to these early models, like the teacher advancement program in Arizona, for example, is that these programs were started and they ran out of funds, and districts were unable to meet the promise. And usually for two reasons. One, if you don't cap it and you don't do quotas, which you never should do, and you challenge teachers with more money and they're underpaid and you ask them to work harder and do certain things, for the most part teachers do it. And so many of these what happened in many of these programs is they figured, well, we have enough money for X to pay X number of teachers in this incentive program. Well, twice as many teachers met the criteria, and the programs kind of went belly up. But the second was that there wasn't real planning and long-term investment. So in Denver, the deal was they had to pass a $25 million bond with the voters in Denver before this program was implemented, as a guarantee that the program would work in perpetuity, and that bond could only go toward the pro-comp system. They passed that bond, and that has continued, and it's kind of in black and white. As long as that bond is there, it'll go toward that. Again, they worked with it in partnership with the union. They had a vote of the Denver Classroom Teachers Association, where 75% of the members of the association voted in favor of the system. So those are some of the key elements in which Denver worked well. There are, let me close, where is that? There are, what we looked at was, we think there are a number of effective ways in which you can implement alternative compensation systems. Both because of our reputation, partly because of our reputation, and partly because of the way we've historically done business. It's real easy to identify that that the teachers union is against everything. We always fight. The teachers union is always protecting the status quo and always against everything. We're in a lot of meetings where we just lament, why does everybody feel like we're always against everything? And sometimes we have to look in the mirror and say, oh, because sometimes we're against everything. But more, so that's part of it. But the other part is really trying to look at creative and innovative models and how we support what's going on in places like Prince George's County, in Denver, in Portland, Maine, and Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and several others, where there are very innovative systems for skill and knowledge-based compensation that dramatically change the single salary schedule. We know, for example, that we have to come to terms with the fact that the one place in which the research is pretty clear on is that master's degrees in the single salary schedule have little to do with teacher quality and teacher effectiveness. Now, when you dig down in that research, what you see is classroom-based master's degree programs that improve practice have an impact. But most salary schedules are just generic. Whether your master's degree is a Master's of Arts in Teaching that's very classroom based, or basket weaving, you get the same, you get the same step on the salary.
You have a master's degree in a content area like math or science,
right.
But if you have something
Exactly.
like a Master's of Arts in Teaching or something more general.
Yeah, the more general it is,
the
less impact
yeah.
it has. But very few of our salary schedules are tied to the type of master's degrees in which you get. But more and more of these innovative systems that we like are looking at job-embedded professional development opportunities and the skill and knowledge the teachers get, and rewarding them for the skill and knowledge and the improvement of practice in their practice that results. And so many of these, part of the ironic part of it is most teachers are required to do professional development. Those of you who know a lot about the history of professional development, much of that professional development is very disconnected with the realities of what's going on in the classroom. It's not connected. And some of these innovative programs are saying, you take the professional development that's going to improve your practice directly in the classroom, and you can demonstrate the skill and knowledge and how it's improved your practice, we're going to compensate you for that, which is kind of a whole different thing than saying, go to wherever you can get the CEUs and buy out of your own pocket. You can pay $50, sit in a workshop for an hour, get your CEUs, bring the paper back, and you'll continue. So there are a lot of innovative programs that look at this skill and knowledge based system that we think is going to be the clearest and most direct connection between compensation, what teachers know and can do and how they demonstrate that practice, and then how it impacts student learning. So we think there are a lot of great programs on there. I'll be glad to talk about them. I won't talk about them anymore unless you want me to, and you ask me about them here, or you get ready to ask me questions or debate me and tell me where I'm wrong. I'd love to do that as well.
I have a question. Does the NEA, do you guys have a stance on paying extra for National Board of Professional Teaching Standards certification?
Absolutely. NEA was one of the founding members of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. We worked in every state that has incentives for national board compensation. Our association led the fight in getting those. There is no better measure of skill and knowledge-based pay than national board certification, and we think of teacher quality and teacher effectiveness. So yes, we've done quite a bit of work on that in national board certification, and we do support teachers being compensated for that. We're very happy that Maryland jumped on board a few years ago, and that Prince George's County is now really committed to the national board process and has a great effort now going on in national board certification.
Now, what about the fact that national board certification in many places is not something students?
That's a very good question. There have been a plethora of studies on national board certification, and several years ago, a very skeptical Department of Education commissioned the National Academy of Sciences to do a comprehensive review of all of the research on national board certification. Many of us who are advocates of national board certification, who saw the research wars, what you had before this is research wars. One study that said national board certification made absolutely no difference, and one study that came out that said national board was God's gift to everything that's teaching, and we went back and forth with that. The National Academy of Sciences, I'd be glad to send you guys a link to that report if you haven't seen it yet. It came out what year is this? It came out in the summer of 2008, and it put the debate to rest, again with a 4-star, 5-star panel of America's most accomplished researchers, full of again, this was the Spellings and Bush Department of Education